Lil Durk is currently on trial, facing life in prison if he's found guilty. The federal government is currently charging him on 7 different counts, including stalking of Qunado Rondo using a dangerous weapon, interstate stalking resulting in Qunado Rondo's cousin, Lil Pop's death, murder in aid of racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder for hire, and a lot more. But to understand why Lil Durk is on trial today, you have to go back around 6 years to a night that split 4 rappers who had once been on friendly terms into 2 completely different camps. At the center of the case is the government's allegation that Lil Durk later ordered and financed an attempt to kill Qunado Rondo as revenge for the death of King Von. Qunado Rondo survived, but his cousin, Lil Pop, did not. And one of the cruelest details in this whole story is that years before any of this happened, way back in 2013, Lil Pop was actually online praising Lil Durk's music. The song Lil Pop is praising here is one of Durk's first hits, This Ain't What You Want. A couple years before the song came out, Lil Durk founded his own collective called Only the Family, aka OTF. Remember that name because it'll play an important role in this story very shortly. Throughout the 2010s, as Lil Durk got bigger, his OTF collective became a major force within hip-hop. But the government alleges that the organization was working on something a lot darker than just music. Simultaneously, another rap group emerging around the same time was NBA Youngboy's collective, Never Broke Again. The biggest artist on that roster aside from Youngboy was Youngboy's close friend, Qunado Rondo. So naturally, when Qunado Rondo and King Von got into the brawl that took King Von's life, Youngboy stood with Qunado while Durk stood with Von. And this is where the OTF NBA beef originally stemmed from. But just a year before the tension reached its boiling point, resulting in King Von losing his life, Lil Durk, King Von, Qunado Rondo, NBA Youngboy, they were actually all friends and even made music together. Back in 2019, King Von went on Instagram Live listening to NBA Youngboy's music in the car, trolling him, saying that the violent subject matter he was rapping about was all cap, telling Youngboy that he had cap in his raps.
Youngboy talking about on this song, bro. He talking crazy on this man.
Oh yeah?
He ain't even like that.
Oh!
On his ass now.
On his ass.
Cap. You got cap in your raps. You got cap in your raps.
But shortly after this, King Von would quickly take to Twitter to emphasize that this was all a troll. He insinuated here that the internet was forcing a beef that did not exist, and even called NBA Youngboy his homie. But by the summer of 2020, the trolling was harder to separate from real tension. King Von was seen with Janaya, the mother of one of Youngboy's children. Youngboy later appeared connected to King Von's ex, Asian Doll. But on Twitter, King Von would continue emphasizing that people were exaggerating the situation and denied that there was a war over a woman. But while King Von would send one message via social media, other associates of Durk and King Von had a different type of energy. Lil Ricch, a fellow Chicago rapper and childhood friend of both Lil Durk and King Von, would send a tweet to Qunado Rondo threatening to assault him the next time he sees him in public. Now, like I told you guys, several months before this, things seemed to be all good between the OTF and NBA crews. In early 2020, King Von would tag Youngboy in a tweet asking him to release the record that they had made together. But by the end of the summer in 2020, we never heard the record. Instead, Youngboy dropped a separate song titled Dead Trolls, where fans would speculate that he was dissing King Von, saying that his own baby mama Janaya was chasing money by hanging around his quote-unquote ops, and that an unnamed individual was trying to troll because they couldn't get a feature with Youngboy. A statement that bears resemblance to the tweet King Von released earlier in 2020, where he was telling Youngboy to drop the record they had together. He would reference a dog, HOE, that was chasing after dough by hanging around his ops, and saying that an unnamed PUSSY was trying to troll him and mad that he couldn't get a feature. In October of 2020, King Von would release his breakout album, Welcome to O-Block, and on that album was a song called Mine Too, where King Von would seemingly address his situation with NBA Youngboy rapping that he's not beefing over a woman and that he has some beef in Louisiana, Youngboy's hometown. And while King Von would continuously emphasize he had no beef with another man over a woman, remember that he was in a relationship with Asian Doll while Youngboy bared a child with a woman by the name of Janaya, who King Von had previously recorded music and hung out with. In November of 2020, one of Youngboy's associates, Ben 10, would claim that Asian Doll, King Von's girl, had S relations with Youngboy. Shortly after, Youngboy himself would preview a new record that featured Asian Doll, which was titled Meet the Reaper. King Von would respond on Twitter calling the new song trash, while also claiming that he could post something online that would make someone cry and disown their kids. He would also claim to have a song with Youngboy's baby mama Janaya, and that their song was much better than Youngboy's song with Asian Doll. Von would once again state that this was just another case of him trolling. However, he did really disapprove of the record that Asian Doll and Youngboy did together. On the night of November the 6th, 2020, King Von would do a performance at Opium nightclub in Atlanta, and later in the night he would head over to an after party at the Monaco Hookah Lounge. King Von would send the final tweet of his life out at 3 a.m. that morning, saying, "Put me on any beat, I'ma murder it, it's just what I do." But just minutes afterwards, King Von was walking through the parking lot of the hookah lounge and bumped into Qunado Rondo, who was at the same club with his own entourage. Von walked up to Qunado and immediately started swinging at him, starting a physical altercation and sparking chaos amongst the entire parking lot. Tragically, things started to massively escalate as Lil Tim, a member of Qunado Rondo's entourage, pulled out a firearm and struck King Von 5 times. Simultaneously, members of King Von's entourage began firing back with guns of their own and hit Lil Tim. Tim fell to the ground, wounded by the hit, and King Von's entourage stood over him, attempting to take his life. Luckily for Lil Tim, it would appear as though King Von's entourage's weapons would jam up, and they were unable to take that final fatal hit. At the same time, King Von would continue fighting Qunado on the ground, and fighting for his own survival, as he had just been shot 5 times. King Von's friend Muab would separate the fight between Von and Qunado by striking Qunado with a punch. At the same time, the other members of King Von's entourage, which consisted of his friends Slutty, BJ, and Louie, the same individuals who had just hit Lil Tim with a gun, would now attempt to flee the scene. They hadn't realized that they were running directly towards a group of police officers. The cops would open fire at King Von's 3 friends as they thought their own lives were in danger. The retaliation from police officers would lead Slutty to unfortunately lose his life, while BJ sustained a hit to the head and Louie was hit in the leg. And while these 3 individuals were involved in their own confrontation with police officers, King Von's friend Muab would drag him to their car and drive him to the Grady Memorial Hospital. Simultaneously, Qunado would also take Lil Tim to that very same hospital, as he was also wounded by hits from a gun from that very same altercation. Qunado would even go live on Instagram as he rushed Lil Tim to the hospital, letting fans witness the gruesome moments of Qunado begging hospital employees to quickly assist his friend before he lost his life. While Lil Tim was lucky enough to survive this fatal attack, in that same hospital, King Von tragically suffered a much more drastic fate. Medical staff administered 3 rounds of epinephrine, shocked King Von 5 times with no success, and sadly pronounced him deceased at 4:48 that morning, less than 2 hours after he tweeted that he was ready to rap on any beat. That same day, Lil Durk would discover the tragic news about the passing of his childhood friend King Von on an Instagram Live where he was previewing a snippet of a then unreleased track, Back in Blood with Pooh Shiesty. Meanwhile, the Atlanta Police Department would quickly begin their investigation on who took King Von's life. Within 24 hours, they arrested Lil Tim at Grady Hospital, where he was being treated for his own bullet wound. And initially, they charged Lil Tim with taking Von's life.
I don't know the scenario you were in or anything like that. I just came here to watch, sit on you, but I gotta cuff you to the bed. I'm sorry? Like I said, I didn't work last night. I don't know what's all going on, but apparently you're in custody.
Lil Tim would spend several months in jail, posting a $100,000 bond in March of 2021. And he claimed he was acting in self-defense, protecting Qunado Rondo during the initial assault. Prosecutors in this case faced the challenge of proving that the fatal attack wasn't justified, given that the surveillance footage showed King Von initiating the physical confrontation. So with Lil Tim's charges being dropped and Qunado Rondo unharmed by the altercation, seemingly capable of setting the violence aside to focus on music, and with both NBA Youngboy and Lil Durk becoming two of the biggest rappers in the game at the time, it seemed like this would be the perfect moment for all parties involved to put the problems in the past, acknowledge and mourn the lives lost, and attempt to focus on growth for the future. But Lil Durk, he had just lost his closest childhood friend, and the world wasn't ready to let Durk leave Von's legacy where it was. They wanted revenge, and with the desire for revenge from Von losing his life on that cold Atlanta night in November of 2020, the disturbing movement of Slide for Von began to emerge, the implication that there must be retaliation for the attack that took King Von's life. When Lil Tim was initially released from prison after claiming self-defense for taking Von's life, Von's other childhood friend Lil Reese would get on Instagram Live, and when he was asked about Lil Tim being a free man, Reese would reply saying, "We're gonna roll him up real soon. Roll him right up. Big backwoods."
We gonna roll his ass up real soon on my mama. Roll his ass right up. Big ass backwoods.
A couple months later, in October of 2021, Lil Durk would hop on the remix of Nardo Wick's song Who Wants Smoke, where he would address the internet antagonizing him to quote-unquote slide for Von. Durk rapped, "They're on my page like slide for Von. I know they're trolling me. Outside with y'all big homie. Beyond, I keep them folks with me. Got it back in blood. Y'all just don't know. That's how it's supposed to be." And this would actually be one of the songs that a federal judge has permitted prosecutors to introduce portions of as evidence in Lil Durk's murder for hire trial. Another track that's permitted to be used as evidence in the trial is Durk's song Pissed Me Off, a song that was released later in 2021, where Durk would rap, "I lost my bro. I can't be happy till we creep up on the score. I know people act like they're with it, but they're bees on the low. Grab a gun, and if you're not with it, put up money for a gun. Put up money for a hot car. Put up money for a bond. I don't see you on the regular, but I see you screaming Von." These lyrics are wildly interpreted as Durk instructing people around him who were close to King Von to be prepared for war, as Durk himself wouldn't be satisfied about losing his brother until they quote-unquote crept up on the score, aka even the playing field. And if people who were close to Von are not comfortable with carrying out the attack themselves, Durk instructs them to put up the money for the elements involved in carrying out the attack. Put up money for a gun, or for a bond if someone gets locked up for the crime, or for a hot car, aka a vehicle used to carry out the attack. Now I want to make it clear, these are just my interpretations of Lil Durk's lyrics, but I personally find it highly unethical to use art and music as a form of evidence in a court of law. Something about that definitely doesn't sit right with me, but we'll dissect all the other evidence that prosecutors have displayed thus far once we unpack the entire Durk trial. The third and final song that prosecutors may be using lyrics from as evidence against Lil Durk in his upcoming trial come from the 2022 song Aha, where Durk raps, "Don't respond to nothing about Von. I'm like, F it, you're tripping, go get your gun. They're dropping locations, I'm getting it done. F tweeting, we're sliding, the feds will come." And just a couple months after the song released, the fatal attack which led Lil Durk to be charged with murder for hire would take place. On August 19th, 2022, at around 11:30 p.m., Qunado Rondo and his cousin Lil Pab were getting gas at a station near Beverly Boulevard and Spalding Avenue in central LA. You'll see later in this video as we unpack the full Lil Durk trial that one of the most disturbing elements of this entire attack is the fact that it took place right in the center of Beverly Hills, one of, if not the most prestigious, high-income, heavily monitored, popular tourist neighborhoods in all of America. According to police reports, Qunado and his entourage had stopped in the area to refuel their black Cadillac Escalade. What they didn't know was that this routine stop would turn deadly within minutes. Without warning, 3 armed assailants approached their vehicle and opened fire. The attack was precise and targeted, suggesting that this wasn't just a random act of violence. Surveillance footage would later show multiple individuals approaching the car with guns, all from different angles. And after getting hit, Qunado and Lil Pop would flee the scene, but they had to stop very shortly after for emergency medical attention. A witness noticed them struggling and notified law enforcement. While Qunado Rondo managed to escape physical injury, his 23-year-old cousin, Lil Pop, was struck multiple times, and despite immediate efforts to rush him to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, Lil Pop would succumb to his injuries and lose his life. Qunado Rondo was even captured on film by local reporters as he was standing next to police officers and his cousin, who was in the process of losing his life, and Qunado was screaming in pain as he watched Lil Pop in the final moments of his time on Earth. At the time, law enforcement sources had suggested that the shooters possibly tracked Quando's location, waiting for an opportunity to strike, and their investigation quickly led them to believe that this was likely a coordinated attack, a targeted hit. Over the next few years, a very public back and forth on social media would ensue between Quando's close associate NBA Youngboy and King Von's close associate Lil Durk. But as we approached 2024, it seemed like there might have been hope that the two massive artists and their respective crews would squash their beef and end the cycle of violence and sneak dissing within their music. Gilly, one of the co-hosts of the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast, had attempted to organize a show where both Lil Durk and Youngboy would make an appearance on stage, and Youngboy even posted a video on Instagram tagging Lil Durk, emphasizing that while it may not comply with the conditions of his probation at the time, he was more than down to do it.
Bro, my PO gotta approve you. It don't work like that. You gonna send my head to jail. You gonna throw the concert of the century.
On Lil Durk's end, at this point in time, he claimed his #1 priority was to clean the streets of Chicago up, stop all the beefs, and focus on positivity. In an interview with the Big Facts podcast, Durk said, "The #1 priority for us in the streets and politician-wise is to stop the violence and slow it down as much as possible. It starts with everybody coming together. But like I said, it's hard because you probably got him over here thinking that he's all that, but his young guys don't even respect him. So even if he's like, come on, let's get together, they'd look at him like, get the F out of here." Durk also did an interview with DJ Akademiks, and Akademiks had mentioned people trolling Durk about quote-unquote sliding for Von, but also asking why that trend had mysteriously died down by the time of this interview in 2024. Durk's answer was ultimately very chilling and cryptic. While one could interpret it as Durk saying that the horrible trend is over, his long pauses and vague statements could lead one to also believe that there was a much deeper, darker reason as to why people stopped saying Durk should slide for Von. Like he mentioned in his 2021 record, Who Wants Smoke, it's possible that Lil Durk had already did what he needed to do, so the request to slide for Von was perhaps no longer needed.
You get triggered by the slide for Von comments. I don't know if people still say it. They used to say it, but you also mentioned a song. They be like, they be saying slide for Von.
For some reason, I just don't see them comments no more. For some odd reason. I don't know. Might be the water. You be seeing them comments a lot?
They kind of chilled out a little bit.
I wonder why. We here though. We different in Iraq.
But regardless of why everyone stopped saying slide for Von, Durk continued 2024 on a positive note, even receiving the keys to Chicago Villages Broadview and Bellwood on October 18th. However, as the month progressed, Durk's upward trajectory would massively come to a halt On October 24, 2024, federal agents arrested 5 men in connection to the August 2022 attack in Los Angeles that took the life of Quando Rondo's cousin, Lil Pop. Those 5 men are being charged with conspiracy to commit murder for hire in retaliation for King Von's loss of life. Each of those 5 men have an alias that we'll use to refer to them when they're mentioned throughout Lil Durk's trial. They are Vonnie, Dede, Flocka, Brown Eyes, and Boogie. They were all alleged members of Lil Durk's OTF organization. Remember earlier in this video I said prosecutors believe OTF was more than just a record label. In the indictment they showcase how that very same company was funding organized crime. According to the indictment, the alleged OTF members set up a bounty and used a credit card that was associated with the record label to book plane tickets to travel from Chicago to California in order to hunt down Quando Rondo after learning his whereabouts. They claim that Vonnie flew himself on a private jet from Miami to Cali to oversee the operation and secured the hotel rooms and other necessary tools that were used to carry out the hit. The feds claim that Vonnie helped procure cars, ski masks, and firearms to carry out the deadly plan, including renting the BMW and Infiniti sedans fitted with fake license plates that the group had allegedly used when they allegedly stalked Quando Rondo and murdered Lil Pop. Now, as far as who Vonnie is, he handled the operations side of OTF and Lil Durk's career. Old videos of him, Lil Durk, and King Von have resurfaced where they're all buying jewelry with chains that say OTF on it, and Vonnie even claims with the week that they had, they'd be able to afford a lot more.
Can I get an OTF chain, man?
The way things are looking this week,
Woo!
not gonna happen.
A1, right? A1, right? A1, right?
Not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen? Man, looks like I'm about to make me an additional one then.
Now remember, this Vonnie individual, he'll play a very important role in what's been going down in Lil Durk's trial, which we'll touch on very shortly in this video. But in the meantime, let's get back to the allegations prosecutors make, which is the reason Lil Durk is on trial in the first place. See, even though it was Lil Pop, Quando's cousin, who lost his life, prosecutors believe Quando was the intended target, and while he was sitting in the vehicle at the time, the bullets ended up hitting his cousin Lil Pop instead. And just hours after these 5 OTF members were arrested, Lil Durk himself was taken into custody by U.S. Marshals and booked into the Broward County Jail on the night of Thursday, October 24th, 2024. The feds named Durk as the mastermind behind the murder-for-hire plot conspiracy in the attempt to take Quando Rondo's life. The plot that, of course, instead ended up leaving Lil Pop deceased. The federal complaint against Lil Durk hits him with a conspiracy charge related to the alleged murder-for-hire and states that the OTF members who killed Lil Pop all acted on the orders of Lil Durk. Prosecutors believe Lil Durk was looking for revenge for the loss of King Von's life. According to the court documents, Lil Durk was the one who placed the bounty on Quando Rondo and helped others to procure the ski masks, rental cars, and hotel rooms to assist in the hired hit. The feds say telecommunications records show a phone number associated with Lil Durk was looking to cover his tracks when he texted one of the 5 OTF defendants saying, "Don't book no flights under no names involved with me." The feds say he's allegedly linked by credit cards to these flights. And according to the court documents, the feds caught wind that Lil Durk was attempting to flee the country right when the 5 OTF members got arrested for taking Lil Pop's life. Durk had booked a private jet to Italy, and while he was on his way to the Miami airport to board that flight, the feds intercepted and arrested him just 1 hour before the flight to Italy was supposed to take off. The initial indictment of this murder-for-hire plot had listed Lil Durk as co-conspirator number 1. There were 4 different co-conspirators, and within the court documents of this case, it stated that one of the individuals reportedly cooperated with law enforcement by wearing a hidden wire for several years, having 30 different meetings with police officers, and gathering evidence that allegedly implicates Lil Durk. This individual is now known to be Lil Durk's longtime friend, OTF Jam, who was released from prison in 2022 after serving 12 years for attempted murder, and he reportedly provided information directly linking Durk to the murder-for-hire plot targeting Quando Rondo. OTF Jam even did an interview in 2023 where he spoke on meeting Durk, saying that, "I remember Durk was making rap songs for our parties. That was bro. Back before the fame and the money, he made a way for me to be straight." OTF Jam even revealed that Lil Durk helped him get back on his feet and gave him $50,000 when he was released from prison in 2022.
My whole time in jail, that stayed, bro. Before the money, that was bro. 12 years flat, did my time. Ain't told on nobody. Right. Now I'm back. I'm living a life I never thought I'd live.
He was one of the main motherfuckers that held you down your whole bid.
Hell yeah. I went like my whole time in jail, I was straight.
He said, Jam get out that jam, I give him 50, he ain't gotta ask again, bro.
Jam get out that jam, I give him 50, ain't gotta ask again.
Bro, he said he gave you 50, bro. You know what I'm
Facts.
saying? Like more than that. So can you tell us how much he gave you, or you don't even? You don't even.
Crib, car, all that. I did everything to take care of anything I need to take care of.
It's now been confirmed that OTF Jam, the man who Durk gave $50,000 to when he was released from prison, will testify in this case. So front to back, let's break down everything we know from the Lil Durk trial. August 18th, 2026 wrapped up the final day of the pretrial hearing, where prosecutors basically presented a lot of evidence that they want to use in the trial to see if the judge would approve it. The government also has a theory that the murder of Lil Pop was connected to a gang, basically implying that Lil Durk's OTF collective was a gang. The hearing centered around whether or not the judge would approve this theory to be used in the trial, and that relates to exactly what government's gang experts would be allowed to testify about. Now I've got to give a very special shout out to the creator You've Got Mail, aka I'm Not a Lawyer, but she's got a very awesome YouTube channel and Twitter. I highly suggest you guys check her out because she's been at the Durk trial giving us detail by detail about everything that has went down thus far. And here she's reporting on all the different exhibits, aka the evidence that the government is bringing forth, and asking for the judge's approval to use it in their prosecution against Lil Durk. I'm not going to read you every piece of evidence, but we'll go through the interesting ones. Exhibit 148 is a screenshot of King Von wearing an OTF and O-Block chain. The government wants to use it because it shows who Von was and his connection to Lil Durk. Exhibits 152 and 159 show photos of Lil Durk and Wilson, aka Dede, another defendant in this murder-for-hire case, and in the photos, they're holding up cash. The government says that one of the first leads that the Los Angeles Police Department had on the murder of Lil Pop was Exhibit 152, which is a post from Wilson's Instagram, and it had PW1 in it. Again, Wilson is Dede, one of Durk's OTF affiliates who's in this case, and PW1 is the prosecution witness number 1, which is OTF Jam. The government says that OTF Jam will testify about both photos and that the money in the photos was split amongst the shooters. Basically, Dede had posted a photo of himself and Lil Durk holding up cash. OTF Jam was in the photo, and this was one of the first exhibits that led the police department to start investigating Lil Pop's murder. At some point after that, OTF Jam, one of the people in the photo, became a government witness and will testify in this case that the money in those photos specifically was used to allegedly pay the shooters. The next exhibit was a screenshot from the music video of the song Pissed Off by Lil Durk, where he's seen throwing up hand signals. Remember, Pissed Off, like I showed you earlier in this video, contains lyrics that the prosecutors want to use as evidence within this case. And they claim that the hand signals that Durk shows in the Pissed Off music video were created for King Von. The next exhibit is a screenshot from the Block is Hot music video, which is a song by Dede, Durk's artist, and Durk himself. The government wants this screenshot in the trial because PW1, aka the witness OTF Jam, was present for the shooting of this music video. He was wearing an orange sweater in the video, and at the shoot of this music video, OTF Jam was confronted by Lil Durk and the co-conspirators of the case in the bathroom, and he was told that he was being reckless with his crimes and quote-unquote can't be out there committing murders. You're gonna get us caught up and the feds on us. The next piece of evidence is Dede throwing up gang signs, and OTF Jam will testify that the signs are disrespectful to another gang. The government also wanted to include a voice memo from 2023, which was a year after the murder, of Booney Mo instructing OTF Jam at the direction of Lil Durk. The judge had allowed it, but now has concerns because the voice note came, quote-unquote, a million years after the murder. But the government says that it shows that Lil Durk gives the orders. They also want to show text between Lil Durk and Dede because, according to the government, it's basically an admission of guilt. It shows that Lil Durk and Dede are upset that O-Block didn't get revenge into their own hands. Lil Durk says something to the effect of, "These guys aren't even sliding for Von, leaving it all up to us." More texts included a back and forth that took place weeks after King Von was killed, where Lil Durk allegedly says, "I'm not celebrating New Year's because my dog is dead and nobody is doing anything. Quando Rondo's out here acting like they don't have nothing to worry about, even though we got the location." At another point, the quote-unquote OTF trap house had got raided, and there were texts around that time between Lil Durk and other co-conspirators in this case, which allegedly shows that they believed OTF Jam was cooperating with the feds, and that's why that house ended up getting hit with several warrants and was raided. Because they were suspicious that OTF Jam was cooperating with authorities, Lil Durk said, "Delete this whole thread." Another co-conspirator made sure to delete it from iCloud. The judge, however, was concerned that these texts could have been about drugs, not the actual murder. How could the government actually prove that Lil Durk was paranoid or suspicious about the murder? Now, what I find interesting is one of the pieces of video evidence that the judge actually did approve to be used in the trial. And that's a podcast clip of Tekashi 6ix9ine's interview with Wack 100, where the government claims that prosecution witness number 2 will testify that the clip blew up the concept of Slide for Von. Everyone saw this clip, and Durk was aware of it. Now, we'll get to who prosecution's witness number 2 is in a moment. Remember, the prosecution witness number 1 is OTF Jam, allegedly. But it's very interesting that the government wants to run with the narrative that essentially the clip of Tekashi and Wack 100 talking about Lil Durk not sliding for Von led the entire Slide for Von movement to become a viral internet meme.
They know the exact nigga that put a fucking 10 in King Von and he died there by himself. Why nobody slid for that nigga? I don't see you on Instagram saying, "Yo, go slide for that man."
Hey, hold on.
Go hit
Hold on.
that kid me.
Hold on.
Why this nigga not shooting
Let me be real with you.
Von? I don't see you on Instagram saying, "Yo, Durk, go slide for your man." Why is Durk not sliding?
I don't know no politics.
And
listen,
why is this nigga not sliding on?
How you know what they doing? Just because it ain't publicized on social media, how you know?
Now back to the gang theory. The prosecution, aka the government, wants to build the case around OTF being a gang, Lil Durk being the leader of the gang, and funding all the gang activities, paying for the quote-unquote hot car, the ski masks, the guns that were all used to take the life of Lil Pop. Lil Durk's defense, which includes Young Thug's old lawyer, Brian Steele, they argued that this case was initially about murder for hire. They can't prove that Lil Durk set up a bounty on Quando Rondo, and now they're trying to make it about a gang case. And if it really is about the revenge for King Von's death, that wasn't even about gangs. It was either about A, a music dispute, or B, about girlfriends. Because remember earlier in this video, I showed you guys how King Von would continuously say that he was not arguing with other people about women, but simultaneously, him and NBA Youngboy were continuously taunting each other on social media about being linked to each other's respective significant others. Lil Durk's defense here is saying that if the government really does want to run with the narrative that the death of Lil Pop was revenge for King Von's death, King Von's death didn't initially stem from a gang war. It stemmed from him going back and forth with NBA Youngboy over music and women, which led King Von to bump into NBA Youngboy's artist Quando Rondo outside a club and get in an altercation with him that ended up taking his life. Durk's defense continues by saying that the prosecutors want the jurors to associate Lil Durk and all the other defendants with a gang so that they automatically will believe they're guilty. Brian Steele said, "The gang expert will be used in the trial to quote-unquote send chills down the spine of the jury, spooky, scary gang members." Basically, if the jury believes that Lil Durk was the head of a gang and this trial centers around him being a scary gang member, the jury will be more inclined to believe he's guilty. The government countered this argument by putting another exhibit on the screen, which was a text message that they say shows that the case was about gang activity. We don't know who the text was sent to, but Lil Durk says, "Real gangsta," and the response is, "For show went out gangsta," and Lil Durk says, "I gotta go all out for him." The government then says that Lil Durk did this because King Von was a respected gang member and there needed to be retribution for his death. So a big question of this case is, was it Lil Durk being a gang leader, ordering different gang members to commit a murder, or was it a murder for hire to seek revenge for their friend, King Von? Ultimately, the judge ruled that the government will not be permitted to say that this was a gang-related murder case. And with that, no witness can testify about separate gang rivalries or Lil Durk's membership in different gangs or about the fact that Lil Durk had been arrested before. And it looks like Lil Durk's defense team may have been onto something. Remember how they said, if prosecutors paint the picture that this was a gang operation, even if the jury doesn't believe that Lil Durk had put out money for the murder of Qunado Rondo, they might jump to a conclusion even sooner that Durk and the other co-defendants are guilty just because they were painted as being part of a gang. Because during the next day of the pretrial hearing, the members of the jury were being selected, picked out of a pool of 80 potential jurors. It would ultimately get narrowed down to 18. In order to narrow it down, each of the 80 potential jurors were given a questionnaire where they were asked various questions. On that questionnaire, juror number 18 had written, by looking at them, aka Lil Durk and the other defendants of this case, they look guilty and I've seen a lot of people die by people who look like them. The defense had wanted to strike this juror because of their bias, and the judge had said there are a lot of Americans who would say by looking at these people, they look guilty. The question is, can they put that aside and be fair? The judge further said that if they can't put it aside, they will be struck, aka they will not be on the jury of this case. And just a quick correction, I had said that they ultimately want to pick 18 jurors to be the jury of this case. It was actually 16 jurors. It was juror number 18 who had this bias against the appearance of Lil Durk. Another potential juror, juror number 4, was a full-time student who said that he actually listened to Lil Durk's music. And what's funny is, of course, the government said that they'd be okay with juror number 4 being excluded from the jury, and the judge said, I'm sure you would, because obviously if someone is a fan of Lil Durk and listens to his music, there's a good chance they might carry a bias of their own. Once the 16 jurors were selected, the trial commenced on August 24th, 2026. With that, 3 cooperating witnesses were confirmed. OTF Jam, prosecution witness number 2, which is Kevon Grant, aka OTF Vonnie, the same man who was in the videos I showed you guys earlier getting jewelry with King Von and Lil Durk. He worked very closely with Lil Durk. And the other witness was Keith Jones, aka Flocka, another associate of Lil Durk and defendant in this case. All 3 of these witnesses have pleaded guilty and they will testify. The government, aka the prosecutors, kicked off the trial by saying this is a story of revenge. This isn't about music, it's about murder. They detailed King Von's death and Durk's alleged determination for revenge. They had a presentation that included pictures, text messages, and more. But this is where it gets interesting, and if you've seen any of the nonsensical internet discussion about whether or not Lil Durk is a snitch, it's because of this right here. Remember that Kevon Grant, aka OTF Vonnie, has already pled guilty in his involvement of the murder of Lil Pop, and he's now cooperating with the government as a witness and he'll testify in this case. Well, Lil Durk's defense team flips that to say that OTF Vonnie did all of this. He was there when King Von died. He was there in May of 2021 in Georgia, where there was a separate attempt on Qunado Rondo's life, and he was present at the August 2022 murder of Lil Pop. If you're reading the text on the screen, Robinson is Lil Pop. Durk's defense team says that before King Von died, he said to OTF Vonnie, "Why did you let me get shot? Why don't you do something?" So people online are trying to say that Lil Durk is snitching because in his case, his defense is saying that OTF Vonnie was the one who did this and organized the whole thing because King Von, while he was dying, asked Vonnie why he let him get shot and why he doesn't do something. Now remember, there's other defendants involved in this case, aka other individuals who the government believes were behind the murder of Lil Pop. One of them was Dede, and his opening was that he himself was a passenger and Vonnie was the perpetrator. Dede did not know what the plan was before he came to LA. He wasn't needed for Vonnie's plan, and he did nothing to further Vonnie's plan. He was just a passenger in the car that drove up to Lil Pop and took his life. Then you have Brown Eyes, another defendant on the case, aka David Lindsay. His opening statement was that there's no records, DNA, fingerprints, texts, DMs, or calls, including Brown Eyes. If this is a murder for hire, where's the money? After this, several pieces of evidence were displayed, including surveillance footage of the gas station where Lil Pop was shot. His family was present in the courtroom while this footage was played, and they reportedly cried while watching it.
Beverly, and Los
They also displayed evidence showing that Lil Pop had 4 gunshot wounds, and one of them hit his chest, which traveled to his left rib, lung, and then pierced his heart. The lead detective of the case is one of the witnesses on the trial, and he ended up walking jurors through how he identified all the defendants involved in this murder-for-hire case. He examined video surveillance footage from around the time of the shooting, and that led him to identify a white BMW and a white Infiniti that were at the scene of the crime. The white Infiniti had a fake license plate, while the BMW was eventually tracked back to a car rental company called VEM Exotic Rentals. The owner of that rental car company had no records and was reluctant to show video surveillance of his shop, but the detective had noted that there was a picture on the wall of the building with the owner of the car rental shop and Lil Durk. They also have proof that the BMW was returned to the shop on August 20th, the day after Lil Pop had lost his life. The thing is, at the time of the shooting, the GPS on the BMW had tracked it as being 2 blocks away from where the shooting actually happened when it happened. Because of this GPS tracking, they were also able to see that around 30 to 35 minutes after the shooting took place, the BMW went to In-N-Out Burger, one of my favorite fast food restaurants. Surveillance footage from the In-N-Out Burger shows 3 people getting out of that white BMW and talking to people in a black Escalade. From that group of people talking to the people in the black Escalade, 3 people then go inside to the In-N-Out to order food. One of those 3 people has a pair of pants that says "Rags to Riches." This is interesting because it's the detective basically taking you through how he actually caught the suspects of this crime. He identified a white BMW that was 2 blocks away from the crime scene when it happened. 30 minutes later, they go to an In-N-Out Burger. They see 3 people step out of that BMW, and one of those people is wearing a pair of jeans that say "Rags to Riches." Once they Google that clothing line, they see that it's only sold in Chicago at 2 boutique clothing stores. Remember that Lil Durk and all the affiliates that are now standing trial are from Chicago. So that leads this detective to call the Chicago Police Department. From there, the Chicago Police Department, from that footage, was able to identify Dede. They get the LAPD Dede's Instagram, and from there, LA's police department is able to see that OTF Jam is in a picture with Dede on Dede's Instagram, and he looks similar to one of the people in the surveillance footage at In-N-Out Burger hopping out of that white BMW. It's crazy to think that they may have never even gotten this far if one of those people didn't walk into an In-N-Out Burger wearing a pair of jeans that came from a clothing company that was only sold in Chicago boutique stores. From there, the detective sent search warrants to all the different flight companies within America, and United Airlines say that He didn't fly directly to LA, but he flew to San Diego on August 18th, the day before Lil Pop was murdered. And he flew with Keith Jones, aka Flocka, and David Brian Lindsay, aka Brown Eyes, 2 other individuals who are indicted on these charges. Then the detective obtained surveillance footage that shows the suspects arriving at the airport and compared it side by side to the footage they had from the shooting and outside of the In-N-Out Burger. They identified OTF Jam because, according to investigators, he was wearing the same outfit when he got off the plane and during the shooting. Bright red shoes, and of course the same black pants that had the words "rags to riches" on them. Comparing the airline footage and the In-N-Out Burger footage, they were also able to identify Flocka and Brown Eyes. And they claim that Flocka, Brown Eyes, and OTF Jam were the 3 shooters. They then used GPS data from the BMW to track everywhere that it traveled and collected surveillance footage from those locations. They found that wherever the white BMW went, a white Infiniti was usually nearby, that same white Infiniti that had fake license plates on it. Both vehicles were also seen directly behind the black Cadillac Escalade that was carrying Qunado Rondo and Lil Pop. So remember, they took a United Airlines flight not to LA, where Lil Pop ended up losing his life and the shooting occurred, but instead first to San Diego. They were allegedly basically stalking Qunado Rondo. Around 9 p.m. on August 18th, they went to the Level Hotel in San Diego where Qunado Rondo was supposed to be staying. But Qunado Rondo, Lil Pop, and one other person only arrived at around 11:45, and they go upstairs. The white Infiniti arrives to the hotel 45 minutes later around 12:30 a.m., and the white BMW is seen on video basically camping out in that hotel parking lot, circling around it, parking, just messing around until around 1 a.m. After 1 a.m., that white BMW goes to the house that Lil Durk is staying at. He had been renting it since July 1st and had a rental agreement until October 1st, 2022. The next morning, that white BMW leaves Lil Durk's house at around 8:30 a.m. and arrives back at the hotel Qunado Rondo was staying at 9:20 a.m. It's also important to note that 4 ski masks were purchased on that same day, August 18th.
I thought that they'd said previously that Vonnie had driven the car back to Durk's house. That's not what was said. He went right back to Durk's house afterwards, but he didn't take the car. He parked his car off on Hollywood in a random street, and you know what he did? Booked an Uber straight away on his account, straight back to Durk's house right after the hit. Genius move, Vonnie. Yeah, so the Uber record showed that he was dropped off at Durk's house right after. All of the people that were at the In-N-Out restaurant were then basically right after. They went straight to the San Diego airport. They were at In-N-Out at 6:09. They were at the San Diego airport at TSA by 9:30 p.m. Just straight to it. No time for any extracurricular activities. Murder, In-N-Out, check your phone, go to San Diego airport. Ticket booked on the OTF card. Crazy.
That was it for day 1. Day 2 of the trial started with cross-examination, and Brian Steele was handling it on behalf of Lil Durk. He starts off by questioning how many times the cooperators have been interviewed by police. OTF Jam, like I told you guys before, had been interviewed 30 times by police, and only 3 of them were recorded. Keith Jones, aka Flocka, he was interviewed 15 times by police, and 1 of them was recorded. Meanwhile, Kevon Grant, aka OTF Vonnie, he was interviewed 10 times by police, and none of them were recorded. The detective then said that typically when a police interview is not recorded, it's because it's government preference. AKA the government would rather their interview with these witnesses, who again have all pleaded guilty, not be recorded, possibly so that it's not later used as evidence within the trial. And Brian Steele, Durk's lawyer, emphasizes that by saying the recording of the interview would be the best evidence so that these jurors have context of what was said, instead of relying on notes from law enforcement of what was said. Brian Steele then goes on to ask about the credit cards that were used to purchase the flights. Again, the detective was able to track that Dede, Flocka, and OTF Jam had all taken a flight to San Diego on August 18th, the same day that Qunado Rondo arrived in San Diego and the day before the murder of Lil Pop had taken place. Those San Diego flights were allegedly booked on an OTF credit card. So Brian Steele asks, do you have any evidence that Lil Durk actually looked at the credit card bills, all the charges? And the detective said no. So then Brian Steele says, isn't it true that Kevin Grant, aka OTF Vonnie, had previously used the credit card under Lil Durk's name? And the detective says yes. Remember again, Kevin Grant, aka OTF Vonnie, he already pleaded guilty to these crimes and he's now being a witness in this case against Lil Durk. Lil Durk's legal team is trying to flip it to say that OTF Vonnie, he already admitted to these crimes. He was the one who did all these crimes. Lil Durk had no idea of them. And that could be proven by the fact that even though it was one of Lil Durk's credit cards that booked the San Diego flights that touched down in San Diego the same day as Qunado Rondo, a day before Lil Pab lost his life, that same credit card had already been used in the past by Vonnie, and there's no evidence to show that Lil Durk has ever looked at the credit card charges. We then see a conversation with Lil Durk starting on August 17th between him and a guy named Jason Smith. Jason Smith is a close friend and business associate of Lil Durk, and essentially he sends Lil Durk a link on IG on August 17th, and then in the morning of August 18th, again, the same day that OTF Jam and all those other guys took the flight to San Diego to allegedly stalk Qunado Rondo, in the morning of that same day, Lil Durk writes, he still go post? I'ma just fall back off this stuff. Blood. Don't book no flights. Jason says, yo. Lil Durk says, yeah. Jason says, tell Jay congrats on the wedding. Now, we don't know if they're talking in code here when they say, tell Jay congrats on the wedding, but the detective admitted that he never looked at the initial Instagram link that Jason had sent to Lil Durk, and he has no idea what those other texts are about. And Brian Steele asks, if Lil Durk told Jason to not book flights connected with him, why were these San Diego flights booked under names connected to him? And the detective said that he concluded that it was just a mistake by Jason, that Jason had accidentally booked those San Diego flights on a credit card connected to Lil Durk. Now, the last point that Brian Steele made in the cross-examination, again, Brian Steele is the one defending Lil Durk. Remember how the white BMW that was allegedly stalking Qunado Rondo from San Diego to Los Angeles, that was rented from a company called VEM Exotic Rentals. In that same rental store, on the wall was a picture of Lil Durk with the owner of the rental car company. But Brian Steele says there's nothing sinister about being on the wall of a company. Is there other famous people in pictures on that same wall? And the detective says he doesn't recall. Now, once the tragic shooting of Lil Pab occurred at that gas station in Beverly Hills, TMZ had ended up posting a video of Qunado Rondo yelling on the ground, yelling when he found out his cousin was deceased. Like I told you guys before, that clip was played in court, and Lil Pab's family, who was attending that court hearing, were left in tears. But aside from that, the video was circulating the internet and went extremely viral when the killing first happened. And prosecutors had also shown alleged evidence of someone on Lil Durk's business team actually sending him that video just a couple days after Lil Pab lost his life.
Somebody had apparently sent a Fuchsia's TV account post, so that's a very big Instagram post, to Lil Durk of the Qunado Rondo footage, the TMZ footage, okay? It was basically in a string of chat between Durk and somebody that worked for him on August the 20th, 2022 at 12:23 a.m. The person that worked for Durk sent the clip that was on Fuchsia's TV. In addition to that, anybody that's been following this closely will know that there was a Qunado Rondo challenge that this, Chicago-based Instagram, he the biggest BD, he says, right? Famous Richard. He basically put it out there that he was doing the Qunado Rondo challenge. He made a skit where he basically reenacted Qunado Rondo's reaction to seeing Lil Pab's body, the TMZ video. Somebody sent Durk the famous Richard Qunado Rondo challenge. It was on his phone and they played it in full in court. So they basically say, yeah, this was basically making fun of Qunado Rondo. That's what was going on. But after the of Lil Pab, this person that worked for Durk, who had been going back and forth about the flights, the person that booked the flights, they sent Durk a message basically saying, oh, congratulations on Jay for the wedding. Brian Steele said to the detective that had worked on this and gone over the phone, they said, did you research what wedding this was he was referring to? Did you ever connect or think to connect the wedding post to the flights? Do you know who this Jay person is that was mentioned in there? Did you know about any plans to go to a wedding abroad? Did you even try and work out who Jay was, who Jay's wedding was? The detective said no. But the only conversation Durk's having with the guys that booked the hitman after the hit happened is, hey, congratulations to Jay on his wedding. We saw the screenshots that were incriminating that were lifted from Durk's phone that was taken in Georgia. What was very interesting about that is that they showed this screenshot set of messages that was basically Durk trying to get Lil Tim's location after he'd been released from jail. What was crazy about that is it was basically a back and forth. I don't know if this is his messages or if somebody else was forwarding him messages that they had, and they had a mole inside Lil Tim's camp. But basically somebody said, they said they approached him to go home to Savannah, and someone said, okay, what you doing? They did that fast. And then they replied, I'm laying down, they just came and got on the bed, we listening to them talk. Yes, they said it's been in motion since he got released, but the judge just signed off on it. She said when they was releasing him, he was like, these N-words are asleep, but me getting released is gonna wake him up. They didn't really talk much about this text. I think they're gonna bring it up and analyze it in more detail, but I think what they were inferring that was Durk maybe talking to somebody that's got some connection with them. But basically, allegedly, the response was, can she still get the address? And someone said, yeah, she's just waiting on you to tell her what to do. So that was apparently the efforts to get Lil Tim's address. That's not going to help with the stalking charges, but also DJ Akademiks' page came up several times. Apparently Durk had a screenshot of Akademiks' page on his IG. He had screenshotted the TMZ report that Akademiks reposted on his page of Qunado Rondo getting shot at Georgia in 2021. So clearly Durk is watching along all of Akademiks' stuff. All right. Obviously, they did an interview together that's going to get played eventually. But basically, they're saying that Durk, he was locked in. He was watching Akademiks' page. If anything happens and he's screenshotting it, it's coming from Akademiks' page.
The weed man that they were buying off of, he owns a dispensary. So he was getting plugged in. When he was getting plugged in, the weed dispensary man basically came downstairs or told him he was downstairs, and Qunado came out. That's how they got the location. That's how they've been following him, basically. They knew the drop from there. He owns a weed dispensary, they said. He basically called Doodie Low through FaceTime saying, yo, Qunado just hit me saying he was going to buy some weed. He's going to be here anytime. That's when Doodie Low contacts the manager for Durk, who books his flights, and tells him, like, yo, he calls Jam, like, yo, you got to hop on a flight right now. So Jam leaves whatever he was doing with his kids. I guess he said he was with his baby mama. He forgot what he was doing. He don't remember fully what he was doing. He hops on a flight, immediately flew all the way from Chicago to San Diego. And from San Diego, I guess Vonnie and them wasn't with him at that time, but they picked up a Sprinter bus. Then that's when they basically got a call from the weed man, letting them know, like, yo, he's about to It was outside of a residential that they were staying at. Qunado Rondo came down from the residential. Jam said that Qunado came out. He said, Dede, he took the gun, the Beretta, pointed it at the window, and said, I could get them right now. They lacking for real. Once he pointed at the window and said they lacking for real, Jam then said the only reason why they didn't get him right then and there was because cops kept flying up and down the street. Dede said what he said, like, oh, we can get them right now. They lacking for real. Then he seen police coming down. Yes. And then that's when Jam had hopped in another car, he said, and they both went opposite ways, which was the Q50 and the BMW. And that's how they got up out of there. But basically they knew what the residential they were staying at.
When OTF Jam was actually on the stand, he said that there was basically all these frantic phone calls made when they got Qunado Rondo's location to a bunch of hitters in Chicago trying to get them on a job. It was Dede and Booney Mo. Apparently Booney Mo was specifically the person that called him and basically asked him about being involved, but he had Lil Durk on a FaceTime call on another phone on speaker. So Jam knew that Durk was there and that he was privy to this call. He overheard Booney Mo saying, blood, you there on the other line? And then basically, apparently, all right, he didn't have any info about what the hit was going to be. So Jam tried to call Lil Durk directly 2 times. Durk didn't answer. And then Booney called him back and said, hey, Durk doesn't want no one calling his phone that's coming out to LA. He didn't want no contact with anyone that's flying out to LA.
So Jam said, like, he knew something crazy was going on, but he didn't actually know what the details were. He ends up getting flown out to San Diego, driven to LA. They're in this, like, Sprinter bus, okay? They stop off at a Hooters in San Diego, and they basically get told on a FaceTime by Doodie Low they got Qunado Rondo's location, and the whole reason they've been flown out there is to kill him. They're going to trick him and say that somebody's going to come and deliver him some weed at his hotel, and they're going to kill him outside his hotel. But what was crazy is after that, Dede got on FaceTime apparently with Lil Durk in the Sprinter bus, and apparently showed Lil Durk the hitters on FaceTime. Apparently Dede turned his phone to show Durk all of the hitters and said, yeah, you see the Navy SEALs. And then Jam basically gave testimony. They said, like, what was your understanding of what he meant? He was saying Navy SEALs, they're guys that go on missions, they're guys that go and kill people. He said that he turned the phone so that Lil Durk could see OTF Jam, and Durk basically told Jam, yeah, go crazy, and Jam threw up the GD sign. He let the court know what that was, and then basically they kept on going to LA. After that, apparently once they got to LA, they met with OTF Vonnie, and OTF Vonnie, one of the first things Vonnie said to them, he said, hey guys, I got bad news. They said, what's the bad news? He said, I only got 3 guns.
Now, what's most sad about this is that whatever caused the initial rift between King Von and NBA Youngboy, it went on to lead not just King Von to lose his life, not just Lil Pop to lose his life after that, but think about the other countless names that either ended up in the hospital with very serious injuries in all these various altercations, the countless family members who now have to suffer through the trauma and grief of losing loved ones over easily avoidable violence, and the countless individuals who may possibly lose their freedom for life, all over a situation that could have been avoided. Let's just hope Lil Pop's family can get the justice they deserve, and I'll be sure to update you guys with every detail as this trial progresses.